we're going to set up our scene. I already got my... and here we go. Yeah, okay. So there's my horizon line already set up. And in a one-point perspective, this would really be the center of vision. But we're going to actually move our vanishing point over to the side just so we can fit the whole wall in. This program, Sketchbook Pro, has some nice tools. One of them is basically the same thing that you're going to use as straight edge. And I can set it on those points and get my basic perspective set up. And let's stop there for a second. And then I just arbitrarily determine the width and the beginning and the ending point of my wall. And this didn't quite meet up. It should have. But I'm going to fake that in there for now. Give some thickness to my wall. Drop off the corner there, and that didn't meet up either. But all right, now in dividing up the space in the simplest way, we're going to do our diagonal divisions. And I'm going to use a different lighter color just so I don't cloud this up too much. So I'm going to draw a diagonal from corner to corner, corner to corner. And I found my center line. It's not quite there. So that's actually the center of the wall there. And now I'm going to do that again. New diagonal. And a new diagonal. Now I'm going to do one other thing. I didn't talk about it before, but we can go backwards and find the center of the wall. Let's do that in a green color. So here's my center diagonal. I'm going to go backwards to my vanishing point for a minute. So this is center of the height of the wall. Any diagonal that goes through that center, I can actually determine that that's a division and that's a division. So now I have 4 equal spaces, and that's these 4, right? And let's keep on going. So I'm gonna keep changing the color so we can see what we're doing. So let's go pink, and now I'll draw another just the diagonal with my little straight edge tool. Diagonal. And the more accurate you can be, as crazy anal accurate as you can ever imagine, and your drawing will come out much better. Any little mistake will compound over multiple lines and become more and more and more out of whack. So those are my new diagonals, and I'm going to go through the center of this green line. And let's see, I'll keep those pink. So there's the subdivisions. Now we're at 8 subdivisions. And in this case, you notice I'm kind of starting in the center just to be accurate and going up and down. Center, up and down. And that could be enough, but let's go one more level and we'll pick another color. What a nice blue. And I'm going to go diagonal the other way just so that it doesn't get too messy. But you guys get what I'm doing, right? I'm just, instead of doing an X, I'm just going to the center line. So pink to pink, pink to green. Am I doing this right? This is where it starts getting confusing. So actually pink to pink doesn't help me any. It's just line to line, line to line. And you can see where it's getting really tight down there. So let's do these subdivisions. There's it right there. And also when these lines start getting more steep or compressed, it gets harder to find the actual center point where they're crossing at a very... I'm going to redo those last two because I didn't go all the way up. And all the way up. All right, now I need to find some divisions along the vertical line. And there's a kind of cool way to do this, just like, let's say if I had a ruler. In this case, let's just... I'm going to have to eyeball it, but... Let's say if I had my ruler and I'm just going to say, we'll just do even inches, but it's a little too tall for this wall. So what I basically do You know what? You know, I did this. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to subdivide this too. But I could just divide this right on the wall. So I could divide this up like this. And like I said, it's actually, because these are equal measurements, what I do when I'm doing this by hand is I actually just draw, I pick a measurement, let's say this much. That's going to be one division. And I take a little piece of paper and I just mark that. I make my own little paper ruler and then just repeat it and move it up the chain so I can get equal subdivisions. But in this case, I'm going to, in the X, because I don't have an actual ruler, I'm just going to eyeball this because they should be. They should be equal. Yeah, about like that. That's pretty close, right? And now, let's, we got to just do those in blue. So I'm going to go all the way back to my vanishing point just because this tool is easier to use this way, the straight line tool. And I'll erase the excess. And last one. Okay, so now let's do a new layer. And just if this we're done, let's do the bricks just for a minute. I'll go back and do the windows in a minute. I'm going to turn this layer down just a little bit so it's like I got a sheet of tracing paper over this. And I'm going to work on this new layer. So like I said, let's kind of assume that each one of these divisions is going to be, I'll just call it 3 stones. Sorry, get the wrong tool. So, and they're going to be kind of squarish, just so I can make sure my perspective looks good. So I'm dividing this up into 3 different stones, and I can actually go a little bit over the line because I don't want this to be an obvious grid. And then this one I'll do maybe the 3 kind of vertical, and this one. Again, I'll go a little short this time. And this one's slightly over. So as long as I stay within these kind of proportions, and again, let's go a little bit over that one just to, so we don't get this obvious super grid. And notice I've got a little gap in between them and everything. So now let's just do those same stones. I'm going to propagate this over the whole wall. But let's do the same stones down here, and I'll see that, wow, I need to fit 3 stones in this little tiny square. So what's going to happen is things will start getting a lot more compressed. And notice I've zoomed in so much my pencil even looks kind of weird. I'll go finer on my pencil. But when we get down to this level, we actually might start just hinting at stones by just a few lines. And so this is that diminishing detail. So I might just have a couple little verticals and stuff, and as I progress more towards the front, you'll actually see this, the gap and the stuff in between them, the mortar. But even more so, I want to carefully craft these. To me, stonework is all about the cracks, not the actual stones. So I might, you know, kind of round off the edges a little bit. I'll see a little bit more of this edge that they're kind of sticking up. And actually what I was saying earlier too is that maybe these stones should, on the edge, should actually wrap around the corner because these are cornerstones. And so I'll kind of transition there. And I like to do like a transition not with a hard line, but actually with 2 kind of slight double lines. And that indicates the kind of beginning and end of the radius. So, and usually like the bottom edge, I might do darker because it's catching a little bit of shadow under there. And the upper edge might be a little bit lighter, and maybe they're even a little crooked. And I like to vary, you know, stonework is, you know, got lots of varied edges and stuff if it's not precision stonework. So again, kind of darker on the bottom. So that, oops, I forgot these are going to wrap. So if these are the same size, maybe these wrap close to the same, and this one will be a little shorter. And in this case, we'll do a little tiny stone and then a big stone. So it's a good idea to kind of like quickly map it out and then go back in and just clean it up. And this could be really meditative, like where you're just doing these things and you got something, music playing in the background or watching a sitcom or something rather, and just have fun with this. But the whole idea is that the front edge should be really contrasty and sharp and detailed, and it should fade almost like you're going into the fog down to this end where you've got just a kind of very light hint of the stones. But remember, keeping, you know, the same format, that there's 3 stones in every square. And you know, you could do 4 in one, who cares, but again, just kind of a hint at that on the far end. And I'm not going to do the whole thing to fade up to the front end. So that's the stonework. So now let's put our windows in there. In this case, since we already subdivided this, we could just pick some of these subdivisions for our windows. So let's say we'll go in two levels. So there's 1, 2. And this will be the beginning of our window. And the window itself will be two grid units apart. And then let's go down. Let's just see. I'm going to do the backwards on this other side. Go. There's, if you look at it, there's 1 there, 2 there. So here's 2 in and 2 wide down there. And notice I'm not going all the way top because I haven't determined the height. So let's put a 3rd window in. So let's go another 2 spaces. It's there. And then we got 1, 2. Yeah, it doesn't quite work, so we'll go 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So I can do 3 spaces in between these windows, and then there's 2 to the edge. That seems to work okay. So those are going to be my window widths. And then we'll pick a height, and we'll call it this here. So now I got to use this little fancy ruler. Pick my height, and I'm just going to cap off all those windows. 1. Actually, you know what I'm going to do just for fun? I'm going to make that one in the middle actually a door. So these guys will go to here, and then the middle one will go all the way to the ground. And notice again I'm short, so I got to fix that. I don't need that right now, so let's go. And once again, accuracy is so important. Just really, really pay attention to the lines. And I should have connected those as well. So that's on the face of it. That's the window frames. And let's do that technique I was talking about. We'll subdivide this and get some. I'm going to go to my lower layer just so I don't mess this up. And now I'm going to draw a diagonal in this window. So this frame is just going to be right on the surface in this case, and because that's actually probably a little more accurate. And again, notice, like right here, this was a subdivision I did. It's actually not very accurate, so let me undo that. And let's try that again, a little bit more accurate. Corner to corner, corner to corner. And then we're going to pick a width. Sorry, wrong tool. I'm just picking any arbitrary width. In this case, that wide. This crosses right here, and I can go across and see that that's this wide over here. Now, although this is a handy tool, it works better on squares because what's going to happen here is my my top frame is actually going to end up looking fatter because this is a rectangle. So I use this to transfer this over, so it's a mirror image of that, but I think my upper and lower frame I'm going to just arbitrarily do over, but I need to go to my horizon line again. Whoa. So we'll call it about that thick. And that should be the same thickness on the bottom, so I could actually kind of determine the same height here, and I can transfer that back into my lower or further back window. And let's say that's the same height as the door frame as well. So let's take this first window and we'll give it some thickness. So I'm going to draw in depth, and in this case it's horizontal because this back wall is horizontal. Because this is a technical 1-point perspective. So this whole wall is all horizontal. So these got to be horizontal as well. So I just draw off the corners, and then how deep is that window? If it's as thick as this wall, I could actually trace this out, and let's pick another color. I could follow this line up to the edge of the wall, and I could follow it back over, and something's a little bit off here, but and then go back in perspective. And a lot of this is just kind of what I call chasing lines around. Oh, and this is the upper frame of the wall. So I have to do that up here. So forget the picture frame for a minute. If the upper frame of this goes up and over and back, and I draw my horizontal off, where those cross tells me the thickness. And so I can use that same thickness in this view. And I go back in perspective, and so that is going to basically finish that off. Something like that. So now that's my underlying layer, so let's ink it in. And these are very thick windows. This is not really architecturally correct, but and it's also totally flush with the front wall. So if I wanted to make those stick out, I'd have to do a little bit more work on it. But there's your basic window. Let's do the door frame. So I was trying to determine how I could transfer these, the width of those frames into this view easily without it being too confusing. And I think okay, I'm kind of doing a little bit of a tricky thing, see if you can follow along, but I I went diagonally through those corners and found the center point of what would be that projected box. And now I'm going to take that line where it crosses this center line, and then I'm going to drop that back in perspective to my door. And that should go following the vanishing point. And a lot of times when I'm doing this, the grid work is so, thick and detailed, I could pretty much guess where this is going to be without having to go all the way to the vanishing point. So I'm going to project that about over there. And then so what that did is it gave me a little center line here that I can go up to the corners. And now I can kind of determine where that gray line crosses over, how thick those door frames should be. And so, and then going back and perspective. And I think at this point we're not going to see the back of the wall. So now let's ink that in real quick and I'll be done with this part of the assignment. Back down to the ground. That goes off. This is kind of important too. That horizontal line is something that a lot of people miss. And then down here too, I need a horizontal line to kind of indicate there. My molding would be ending somewhere in there. Now I would just transfer this same thing. Well, let's just do it to. This gets really squished in here, so it's going to be pretty hard to tell. But I'm going to get that green line. Go back further to this one. Find the center line where those two cross. Go up to this corner, up to that corner. And then, like I said, this is getting so chunky and funky, it's hard to tell what's going on. This will happen to you as well when you get down into these kind of more detailed areas. So it's about like that, and I didn't finish this off, but and then connect that. And then we need those two little horizontal lines to kind of complete that. And now when I was just talking about fading back in perspective, these lines are too dark for that far corner, so it should be much lighter. But we're gonna actually, I'm gonna cheat this. Watch this; it's gonna be so tricky. Lock that. Never mind. It's not working. Where's my colors? Oh, they're off the screen. Sorry. There we go. So light gray. There we go. And we'll go with medium gray. So it should be something kind of like that. And I'll, whoops, so I don't have my full lines. And this is kind of tricky. I'm going to do these last couple lines. If it's stonework, you don't really want a straight snapped edge, but let's go to black. We want to start kind of bold. And actually, you should have all your stonework in there first, so you can kind of like, you know, go over all the stones. But if it was a straight line, let's get this over here. It's over here. I'm just going to do it straight just for simplicity. It should be nice and thick and then fade to nothing. And let's go up here. We're going to make it even thicker in the top and then fade out. Let's do that in the bottom. Nice and hard and thick, and start fading and break and fade. And we're almost done. Oops, too dark. Nice and light back there. Nice and dark over here. And see, I'm actually building this up with a couple layers of lines sometimes. Just want to make sure there's no gaps in between. And now I think I can turn this off. Yeah, so it's getting there. Now, like I said, this one edge is kind of tricky because you don't want to just really draw. It's not going to be one sharp line. It's kind of two, a beginning and an end of the curve. And then you really want to work it all with the stonework itself. So this, you don't really want to draw a hard line through that edge. And I would continue all this brick out there and everything, but this is the basic principle of everything. Oh, one thing, I forgot my horizon line. Look at that. So horizon line, let's do that, kind of fade it out a little bit too. And in this one little tiny piece of the window, we'll see through there. Now we can turn this all off. And there's my window. And I'll sign it There you go.